Hi everyone, in this video we're going to go over how to create a Webex event and show you some of the differences between a Webex event and a Webex meeting. Now for the most part, a Webex meeting is perfectly sufficient for someone looking to have a virtual meeting. It has all the features that you would need, but sometimes there are certain features that a person might need for a specific kind of meeting that a Webex meeting does not fulfill. And in that case, a Webex event might be a good fit. A Webex meeting is a really great option for something like a board meeting or a specific meeting that you need to have a little bit more control over in terms of the attendees, and also maybe if you wanted to have something like a question and answer session. A Webex event will fulfill all of these needs, and we're going to go over how to create one and how you can take a look at some of those features. So I have my Webex here and ready to go. And the first thing that I want to do when I want to create a Webex event is go to the lower left-hand corner and click where it says Webex Events. Now automatically my Webex is going to switch over to Classic Webex, and under Host an Event we're going to click Schedule an Event. Here under Event Name we're going to just give our session a name, and by default you'll see that registration is required. If you do not want to require registration for your session, you can simply uncheck this. Under Event Password, there is one automatically generated for you, but if you choose to do something different, you can just put that into this box here. You can erase the password that is in there and make a new password. You just have to make sure that it follows these requirements here on the right-hand side. Under Date and Time, this is where we're going to put the date and the time of our event. So let's say the start date is going to be April 29th, and we'll do the start time at 10:30 a.m. The estimated duration would be here, and that's how long the event is going to take place. So for us, we're just going to put down 1 hour. And if you have to edit any of the time zones here and add anything extra besides Eastern Daylight Time, you can just select those from the drop-down menus here. There are two other options here. If you want to let attendees join before the scheduled start time, you can add that option here. And if you would like a reminder email before the event starts. Here under audio conference settings, I usually just leave the conference type Webex audio as selected. And if you want to display call-in numbers for your participants, you could do that with this option here. And that will give a call-in number for anybody who would like to call in using their phone. The entry and exit tone here right now is no tone, and all that really means is when someone enters and exits, there will not be a sound that is made. If you would like the sound, you can add that option here. If you would like there to be no sound, you can leave that as no tone. I prefer no tone because especially if you have a lot of people and it's sort of unpredictable, you would have that sound going on and off as you have your presentation, and it could be distracting. So I'm going to leave mine as no tone. Here under Event Description and Options, this is more along the lines of your preference. If you want to add a description or a host image, a picture of yourself, you can add any event material and you could do that here, or you could just leave everything as default, which is what we're going to do for this particular tutorial. Here under Attendees and Registration, this is where you could create an invitation list for your attendees. Now, in certain cases, in most cases, you might not have the attendee information, or maybe the list is so large that you aren't going to want to spend the time putting all that information in. So what you can do is just schedule the event as normal and then copy and paste the link and give it to your attendees in however you communicate with them. So if you do it via email, you could do it over Facebook, you could do it over a chat. However you communicate with the attendees in your group, you can share it with them by just sharing the link. Under presenters and panelists, if you have somebody joining you for your meeting that's also going to be a host or will need to present during your meeting, you would add them in this section here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use an example of having one panelist in addition to myself for this meeting, and I'm going to click Create Invitation List, and under here put their full name. So I have their full name in here, and we're going to put the email address that they're going to be contacted on as well. You are not required to put a phone number in here, just the full name and the email address are all that's required. So you're going to click Add to Invitation List and check them off here at the top and click Invite. Then when you schedule your event, you can choose to send them an email inviting them to your session. It's recommended to give the panelist a password because that person is a little bit different than a regular attendee. Now this password must be different than the password you set up above for the attendees. So we'll just do something here. And once you put your password in, you can then go on to the next section here. Now this is just more specifics about email messages, the format, invitation emails, registration emails, and for the most part, I will leave this stuff default. But if there's anything that you want to add, you can take a look at these options here for your event and make those changes. So when you're all done, you want to click schedule this event, and you're going to get this screen that comes up prompting you to send event emails. Now, since we only have a host and we have panelists, we're going to select those two options here and click send now, and that's going to send an automatic email to the panelist and to the host with more information about this meeting. So I'm going to press OK, and that confirms that I have the email that has been sent to me. Now, if you want to view this information, there are two ways that you can do it. After you get to this section, you can click Site Events, and this will take you to your Webex tutorial, or you can also go back to Modern View, which if you use Webex frequently, you're probably more likely to know what this view is than the classic view. So if you click back to Modern View, it'll take you to this page here where you can see your Webex event, and it's marked by the word event, is under Upcoming Meetings. So I'm going to switch over to my email now, so that way you can see the kind of email that you would get as a host. So here in my email, I have received this email from Webex about my Webex event tutorial. It gives me the option to put it onto my Google Calendar, where the link would be there. If you operate on Google Calendar frequently, you can add it to your Google Calendar and then just click the link directly from the event right on the calendar. But you can also see here at the bottom that there are two links that have been provided for you. So there's an event address for attendees and an event address for panelists. It's very important to make sure you send the right link to the right person, or else you're going to cause confusion between the participants depending on what role they have inside the event. So in this case, we did not share a attendee invitation list with when we scheduled our event. So we would highlight this link and copy and paste it inside of however we're going to get this information out to our attendees. Now this is also the event address for the panelist, and if they need it, you can send them this link, but we did choose to send the panelists, so they should receive a separate email as well. So we're going to start this event and start looking at a little bit of the features that you have when you're using Webex event. So I'm going to go back to Webex, and here under Upcoming Meetings, I'm going to go to my Webex event tutorial event and choose Start. So at this point, I can choose whether or not I want to share my audio and share my video. I'm going to keep them shut off for now in regards to this video, but if I wanted to share my camera, I would click on Start Video, and if I wanted to share my audio, I would unmute this. And in this case, if we want to just use our computer for audio, we would just leave this option here and not change anything. So I'm going to click Start Event, and that is going to start the event for me on my computer. Now right away you can see that there's already a difference between the Webex event and a Webex meeting. You have a question and answer option here where at some point you can open up the floor for people to come in and ask questions depending on the content you're delivering in your Webex event. And you also have your participants here, panelists, and any attendees that would join would show up here underneath attendee. One of the things that I forgot to mention in regards to creating an event, if we go back to the screen here, this is the screen we were in initially when we were first creating this event, is by default the mute upon entry for all participants is already checked off. So that means that regardless of what a participant does when they enter the session, they're going to be muted. Now, one of the differences between Webex events and Webex meetings is when you are doing a Webex event, the attendee does not have the ability to unmute themselves after they've been muted. So in regards to control, the Webex event is great for that because you can sort of control when somebody speaks and when they don't. So you do have the ability to give an attendee the privilege of speaking during an event by going to them on the list and giving the option to unmute their microphone. But by default, when you're using a Webex event, microphones are muted automatically. Another feature that Webex events has that Webex meeting does not is the ability to have what's called a practice session. And a practice session allows you to get together with panelists to test everything out before opening it up to the attendees. So I want to show you what this looks like, and I'm going to have the panelists come in now to show the example of what it would look like when a panelist joins and starting that practice session. So you can see here that the IT training panelist has joined this session, and now we're ready to go ahead and start our practice session. So to start the practice session, we would just go here up to event and click start practice session. Now it lets us know that we're involved in a practice session now, and we can add any documents that we want or have any conversations that we need to have and see how everything works before the actual event happens. Now it's always recommended to come into an event at least a half hour before your event has started. So that way you can make sure that everything looks the way it should look and everything comes up the way that it comes up. Webex events are for larger groups, so you want to make sure that everything is in motion so that way when that group does arrive, everything goes the way that it should. Another thing about the practice session that's good to know is that anything that happens within that practice session is private. So any conversation the panelists are having are not going to be seen by the attendees, and that could even happen as the event is going on. So let's say you're in the middle of your event, but something is going wrong, or you want to have a private conversation about something, you can start a practice session, and any attendees that are involved in that meeting will get a message on their screen letting them know that you're in this practice session, so they won't be able to hear what's going on. You just want to make sure that when you're done, you go ahead and you click on event and end the practice session. Also keep in mind, if you open up a bunch of files and then enter the practice session, you'll have to open up those files again because the practice session is its own thing. So once you're done, you want to click end practice session, and it lets you know that the event has ended, and you press OK. You can now start letting attendees in, and if you choose, you can even record the session. So just like a Webex meeting, you would click on the recorder here, choose record in cloud and click record, and that will begin recording this session for all the participants. Now if you are recording the session, and let's say you decide to have a private practice session in the middle of the Webex event, you can choose to stop the recording so that way it does not pick up that private conversation that you're having, and it'll pick up after your practice session has ended. So in this case, I'm not going to record the session, but I always recommend letting everybody know that's going to be a part of the session or the event that you will be recording the session. Now, besides muting a participant upon entry, as a host, you have the ability to make changes to your session depending on how you want it. So there are particular tools that a Webex event has that you may or may not want your panelists or attendees to have. So for example, we have the question and answer option here, and by default, it's already there. But let's say you weren't prepared to take questions from participants until after the session has been completed. What you can do is go into the tools of your Webex event and remove the option for question and answer and any other things that you feel are not necessary for your session. For this tutorial, I'm working on a Mac, so if you want to get to your options on a Mac, you would go ahead and click on Webex events here at the top, click on preferences, and here under tools, you'll find all of the tools that you can use in your event. If you're on a Windows computer, you would go to the top and click on event, then options and communications to get to these tools that you can check or uncheck. So in this case, let's say we really don't want to have anything available for the attendees or panelists except the actual content for the event. So I'm going to remove the chat, the question and answers, the feedback, the raise hand, and attention tracking, and just press OK. And that will automatically in real time remove the option for question and answer. And then let's say the time of the event has come. When you're ready to accept questions and answers, you can go back into the same section you just came to and click on question and answer and let that option. If you want to have a chat, you can click that as well. But we're just going to allow the question and answers. And now the question and answers box is back. So if you have a preferred time for accepting questions, you might want to remove it at the beginning and add it back at the end when it's time for that session to occur. Now keep in mind that these options that you are setting are not just for attendees, but they're also for panelists as well. The panelists will not have control to share the screen until you as the host give them that ability. Now just in Webex meetings, it's the same way that you give presenter privileges is by taking the ball, dragging it over to the person that you want to have those presenter privileges and dropping it onto that person. And it will ask you if you want to change the presenter. You can click become presenter. And now the IT training panelist has the floor where they can go ahead and share what they need to share and share content and present. So, but as the host, you have the ability to always take that option back if you prefer. So you can take the ball and bring it back over to yourself, and that will give you back the presenter privileges. Another way that you can give presenter privileges is by clicking on the person that you want to have those presenter privileges. Right click on them and then choose change role to presenter. And you can change it back to yourself the same way by clicking on yourself, right clicking and making yourself the presenter again. Now, the last thing that I want to show you in this video is the question and answer section. So I'm going to have the panelists leave and a regular attendee come in so you could see what it looks like when an attendee asks a question. So we can see that one attendee has joined our session, and if I click on view all attendees, I'll be able to see everybody that is a part of this session. Now, previously in the video, I had mentioned that when we set up our event, we had muted everybody upon entry. So this participant won't be able to say anything in this event unless I allow them to. So let's say they had to say something or they needed to make a comment. I could click on that person on the list and unmute them, and that will give them the ability to say what they needed to say within the session. I also have the option to make them a panelist or expel them for whatever reason if I needed to do that. So I'm just going to X that out for now. And here we have our question and answer session. So let's say it's time for the question and answers, and I want to start answering questions from all of the attendees. So once we have a question come in, it looks like this. And the question that came in was, will you be sending out a recording of this session? Now, obviously, we are just dealing with one attendee, but if you have multiple questions, you want to make sure you select the question first that you want to answer and type your answer here. Now, you can also right click onto your question here, and there's a whole bunch of options as well. So if, let's say, a question that has come is not really appropriate for you to answer, but maybe the panelist, you can assign it to whoever else is in the meeting. So if it's the panelist, that option will be here. Right now, we don't have any other panelists. You can also set the priority for this question, or you can mark that you've answered it verbally. Maybe it came across and you answered it as you were teaching or as you were presenting during the event. You can just check it off that you've answered it verbally. You can also defer your question, which the person will get a message on their end letting them know that for now the answer will not be given, but eventually at some point they will get their answer. You can also dismiss the question as well, or deselect it and don't select the question at all. In this case, we'll just answer quickly because it's a simple question. So you can see that we have our answer written here, and we can send this so that way everyone can see it, or we can just send it privately to the person that has sent it. In this case, it's not really a private question, so we can just send the answer publicly. Yes, there will be a recording available within 24 hours. So you can have a really good question and answer session and answer all those questions as they come in for your Webex event, which is different than what you would for your Webex meeting where you only have a chat to answer those questions. And you can go over the question and answers that have been given by clicking on my Q&A here, and you can see the questions that have been asked and the questions that have been answered. In regards to Webex events, that's really all you need to get started. I hope you found this tutorial to be helpful with telling the difference between Webex events and Webex meetings, and that you'll find it useful going forward for all of your sessions.